Ooh, my bad. All right, people. So from what I'm hearing, the prosecutors are turning up the heat, and they're turning up the heat on things that are goddamn pretty much unexplainable by the defense. Yo, the same gun shot inside the car as outside the car. They already dead before the drive-by happened. Explain all of that shit. That's the thing. So let me see if I could. Here we go. There's some more video. I'm not leaving it. I'm gonna watch it with y'all.
On this, what are you demonstrating in this photo?
This is a demonstrative photo.
My bad. They're saying this is Melly right here? Holy. Why do I think that Melly killed these niggas with a Draco? If he did it. I don't think he did it, because Melly an innocent guy, right? But they're saying they feel he pulled out a gun, shot this guy. This is going to sound like a real cryptic and evil question, but I'm really asking it, like, just honestly. If you got your two ops, or the two guys who were your friends now you're trying to kill, one is here, one is in the back seat, who do you shoot first? I would think you shoot the guy to the right of you before you shoot the guy in front of you. Right? You got to kill this guy first. Because his back is already turned, right? You killed this guy right here because he's really within reach to grab that gun from you. You kill him, then you kill him, right? That sounds crazy, but shit. Yeah, everybody's in passenger seat. All right, let's see.
Photo that would show if an individual was seated in the rear passenger seat behind the driver would be able to obtain a shot into the front seat passenger.
And in terms of the individuals that are in this car, how are they attired?
Mr. Williams had...
And sorry, let me clarify on that one. The people that are pictured in the photo,
oh, yes.
What do they have on to protect the scene?
They're in Tyvek.
Okay. So going on to this next photo, what are you documenting here?
It is a photo from the other side of the vehicle for its demonstrative only.
What number?
6693. I'm sorry. 6692, now moving on to 6693.
And it's just an additional angle. It's all angles from the vehicle.
And in terms of, there's a marker spot there, the red marker on the back of that individual's head in the front seat. What is that showing?
That is the approximate entry point for the defect on Anthony Williams.
And so now going into photo 6697, I'm sorry, 6696. What angle are you showing in this particular?
By the way, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I think a lot of people have been arguing, oh, what about that woman's testimony? Like remember the girlfriend's mom? Like, I think her testimony was pretty good. And I think people are like, oh, nah, like the defense is clearly winning this. I'm going to be very honest with you. I think the most impactful thing that the jury's going to see is this. They're getting pretty much a play-by-play, a reenactment of how the murder looked. Right?
Particular.
This is from the rear of the vehicle.
The orange that we see at the bottom right, what are those things?
Those are the trajectory rods.
Going into the next photo, which is for counsel, 669.
Hey, if the jury believes that Melly did this, they're giving Melly death. Your friend thought he was safe enough to get in the car with you and had his back turned to you while you was in the back seat. And you executed him with a shot through his head that subsequently, you're going to hear them say, it goes through the windshield. They're giving you death. They're giving you death. So all that shit, I know some people are like, oh, nah, they got the motive wrong. He didn't kill them to be in the G Shine gang. That might all be right. But here's the thing. When you see somebody kind of almost reenact a murder, this looks fucking cold-blooded.
97.
It's another photo from the rear of the vehicle.
Are you in any way, shape, or form stating this is the gun that was used?
I'm not stating that's the gun that was used at all.
Okay. Going into 6698. Again, what are you documenting here?
That would be a photograph of the same positioning of the gun from behind from the rear of the vehicle.
Okay. Going to photo 6701. What are you showing here?
This is showing the proximity of the back seat passenger behind the driver in relation to the front seat passenger.
Okay. And so I'm going to go forward to some of the ones now with the ruler. When you are putting the tape measure in, what is your purpose of introducing the tape measure in these photos? And we're now here at 6708 and 6709.
To give, for the demonstrative photograph, to give a relation of distance.
Okay. And so in terms of this picture is showing what?
Well, it's not exactly to the end of the barrel of the firearm, and so it's approximately probably about 12 inches from the head to the end of the barrel.
And so showing it from the other side, is that the better angle?
Yes.
Okay, and that is photo 6713. What are you showing in this orientation of the arm?
The photo is showing that the arm does not have to be fully extended to obtain that shot.
And so going now to this photo, which is 6714, much greater distance. Oh.
Correct. So 6714 shows the firearm in an alternative position, again for demonstrative purposes, to show a distance range, and a firearm can still be fired in that position and in the direction of the front seat passenger.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the rear passenger. Are you using the same demonstrative model for this individual?
Yes.
Okay. So you talked about the blood from Cortland, or the driver, Cortland Henry's shirt on the front. Was there also an analysis done of the blood on the back of Cortland Henry's shirt?
By the crime lab, yes.
Okay. And were you made aware of the results of the DNA of the blood sample on the back?
Objection, hearsay.
Not that I think that Melly did it, right? And I'm trying to be a blank canvas when it comes to that, but what do you think happened? Because put like this, let's say you're in a car with your mans and y'all arguing and whatever, and like, you know, when a lot of people, when they argue, hands is moving around this and third, it feels like the only way Melly, let's say Melly did do it, right? Again, we're hypotheticals. If he did do it, the only way he could do it is if they were unaware, which would tell me maybe they're probably not even arguing, or even if they are arguing, it's not that heated. You get what I mean? Because, like, if you argue with a nigga next to you, you might even turn your back a little bit to the window and you looking at him type shit, right? And the nigga who, if everybody arguing in the car, the nigga who's sitting in the passenger seat or the front passenger seat is going to be looking at you. I don't know. Well, they're not driving, so they can't look at you through the rear view mirror. But they're probably going to try to look at you through some type of mirror. You get what I mean? If they're all talking to you, or if you're talking to them, this feels like the only way you could kill these two dudes is if they were unaware. Do you get what I mean?
Excuse me. Watch your side. Sustain your object. Never mind. Just sustain.
Rephrase your question.
So, Detective Williams, there's testimony before this jury as to the
Somebody says no niggas sleeping through a gun. No niggas sleeping through a gun going off. Well, is it?
person who contributed the blood.
Somebody said Juvie woke up and caught one to the face. Oh, so somebody was sleeping. You think so? Oh, somebody said they were asleep. Wait, why are you saying they were sleeping? Did that come out in trial? I didn't hear that yet. Somebody says you. Well, they're responding to somebody else. They say you obviously don't know why he killed them. It's not for no reason, little bro. Here's the thing. We don't give a fuck what the reason is. If you did kill him, you're going to jail for life. So it's not about the reason at this point. It's did he kill him?
Blood to the back of that shirt. How does that information help your analysis in terms of the shooting inside the car?
The information was learned by me after the fact, and
Objection, hearsay.
I'm not how it helped, not what the information was.
Go ahead.
and it helped to solidify my analysis.
Okay. In terms of, based on the information that you have, can you state how the driver was positioned when the shots occurred for the backseat passenger, Mr. Thomas?
The driver, in my opinion, was seated in the front seat when the shots were fired inside the vehicle.
And in terms of how would blood get on the back of the shirt?
Because he's seated in that position.
Okay. So I want to ask, can we put some chairs here to help demonstrate what we're talking about?
Sure.
Whatever they about to do in court, this about to hit different. It hit different when you see the gun at the nigga's face. It hit different. It hit way different, even more than when y'all was seeing that lady who was promised some shit allegedly by Melly, who was trying to like, oh nah, whatever. I'm like, hey Melly, nah. That shit didn't hit different. This hit different. They're literally recreating a scene. You see the gun.
So you reviewed all of the photos from the initial Miramar crime scene,
Yes.
and is there a difference in the height of the front seats and the back seats?
There are.
And so this is not anywhere close to exact. Is that a fair statement with the chairs here?
Correct.
So, can you demonstrate, if you were the driver, how you would be positioned when the individual sitting in the rear passenger side seat is shot? And if you could step down and show how would the blood from him then be on this individual?
So the driver is seated in this position, just seated here, and not moving. The blood from this individual, from the blowback, lands here, and blood from this individual lands on the back, and it's all from just not moving.
Okay. In terms of the back of the seat, is his back pressed against the back of the seat?
Yes,
Okay. And that for the first individual or the second individual?
for both.
Okay. In terms of, and you can resume your seat, we'll come back to this in a moment. So in terms of the distance between the individual in the rear driver's side seat and Mr. Thomas in that, do you know there to be a minimum distance they were separated by?
Can you restate that?
Sure. The individual, whoever was in the rear passenger seat on the driver's side, and then Chris Thomas, who is in the rear passenger seat passenger side. Is there a minimum distance that they are separated by?
There is.
And how do you know that?
So we have a known distance. As I said earlier, we are confined to the inside of this vehicle. So we have a known distance of shoulder width inside the back seat of this vehicle. We know a distance of shoulder width of Mr. Thomas, and then we would be able to deduce the difference between the center console and another passenger.
So in terms of the photos at the Jeep when it first came to the hospital, are you aware of how the back center console was positioned?
Yeah, it was down just like that.
And showing from what's been previously admitted into evidence as states 30, photo DSC_0127. Is that important for your reconstruction?
Correct. So this is the blood that is on the center console is consistent with Mr. Thomas crumbling into the position above or onto the center console of the back seat.
So the next photo in that series, again from States 30, is that one shows DSC_0133. Is this the plastic bag you spoke about and processed?
Yes.
Going back to your photos, what are you demonstrating in CSW_6716?
So this is a demonstrative photograph to show that you can fire a firearm from that position in the direction of a passenger who would be seated in that seat.
Okay. Now, looking from the other angle, what are you looking at in this photo, which for the record is 6717?
And that is just a forward picture from the front of the vehicle facing towards the back of the vehicle to show that it is still possible to fire a firearm inside the vehicle.
Okay. And then in terms of the measurement, how far away is the firearm from the face at that demonstrative photo, which is 6719?
In this particular demonstrative, it's approximately 6 inches.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury if Mr. Thomas was sitting straight up and didn't move to the side to get away from a gun?
At one point, I believe that he did,
And how do you know that?
because Mr. Thomas has what's called a defensive wound on his right hand, and that defensive wound was caused by a projectile. So I believe that at some point he turned and put his hands up or attempted to de-escalate what was going on and received the firearm projectile through his thumb.
Okay, and so you're pointing to your right hand. In terms of the injuries to Mr. Thomas, do you recall which hand they are on?
I would have to look at the photograph.
Okay, and we can come back to that in a moment on that. So the, and if Ms. Smith is looking to get the any photo. The defensive wound. Why is that important for you as a shooting reconstructionist?
Because it lets me know that Mr. Thomas was not aware of what was going on. He was taken by surprise, and his hands being up. If his hands were down, he would not receive a projectile through his thumb. His hands are in an up position, almost saying, maybe don't shoot, or I relinquish or something, but he receives a defensive wound due to that projectile, and I think at that point he repositioned to be forward facing.
Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to approach with the ME photos, which are state 75. Showing you what's been previously admitted as state 75. Which hand is pictured that exhibit.
All right, and let's see. This is that, and then the last one I'll play
Sergeant Williams.
before we get into some current shit that happened today, and then I'll give you a little bit of a summary.
Can you give an area of the car with which the shots emanated from?
Yes.
And could you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what area of the car did the shots that killed Anthony Williams emanate from?
From the driver's side back seat.
As to the shot that killed Christopher Thomas, where did that shot emanate from?
Driver's side back seat.
Okay. Is it possible for there to have been two shooters inside that car?
No.
Why not?
There is no time.
So explain what that means.
So, Mr. Williams was not even aware he was about to be shot. When Mr. Williams was shot, Mr. Thomas puts up his hands and is shot, and then is shot again.
Okay.
There's no time for anybody to switch a firearm. If there were, I believe one of those individuals would be alive. There's no time to switch. It was a very, a rather rapid event of firing.
Okay. Can you say the length of time between the fatal shots and then the staged drive-by shots later on?
It was enough time for the heart to stop beating, for there to be no circulation due to the wounds that I examined from the medical examiner's office. None of the wounds have any blood in them, which tells me that they're all ante-mortem wounds. So the time was long enough for the heart to stop beating.
Okay.
Damn.
Is there scientific or medical testing to recreate that in any way, shape, or form?
Yes, it's knowledge. I'm sure the medical examiner could say the same thing.
So in terms of, it's nothing that can be recreated with a live human.
Correct.
In terms of the number of shots, you said 17 outside the car. How many rounds were fired inside of the car?
3.
And can you exclude the shots to the head for Mr. Williams and Mr. Thomas as coming from outside of the car?
Yes.
How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury that, for example, shot that was marked as H in the, here, let's go to 6755. How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that shot H is not the one that wound up in the face of Mr. Thomas?
Because Mr. Thomas is already crumpling at this point, and he is actually he's in the clear, if you will, of site H.
How can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that site H is not the shot to the back of the head of Anthony Williams?
Because site H continues and strikes Anthony Williams in the shoulder.
In terms of site K, the one that goes completely across the car, how can you tell that no one was sitting in the rear driver's side seat when that bullet came through the car?
It would have hit their legs.
Was there any sign of blood or anything on that seat?
There were signs of blood on the seat, yes.
Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what is Blue Star? You've talked about it a little bit.
Blue Star is a chemical
And
that
so I wanted-
is used in forensics. It's very similar to what most people know as luminol.
What's the difference between the two?
Luminol is a very caustic chemical, and it's not really healthy to use. It's effective, but it's not really healthy to use. Blue Star accomplishes the same thing. It still detects blood diluted up to 100,000 times, and it's not caustic.
Oh.
So it's attracted, luminol and Blue Star, they're both attracted to the heme group of blood. primarily iron, and it will detect trace amounts of blood even after it's been washed. So if you have blood on your shirt and you throw it in the wash and throw it in the dryer and then hand it over to me, I'm going to tell you to put it back in the wash because there's blood on it still.
Okay. What if it's been 5 years?
You'll still get that result.
Okay. And what type of result are we looking for?
We're looking for blood.
And so what does it look like if there is blood?
So if there is blood, and that's the other difference between luminol and blue star. With luminol, the illumination of the luminescence of the blood, the hemigroup, is not as bright, and it is not as lasting. So you have to be very quick with your photograph in order to get it. With blue star, it is very bright and it's lasting, so it's long enough for us to get a photograph of it multiple times, and if we need to, we can come back and squirt it again and duplicate the result if we're not happy with our photographs.
Okay. In terms of the luminol, does that destroy the DNA?
No,
Okay. Does blue star destroy DNA?
no.
So is there a version that the sheriff's office uses now? More so than the other? Is there a preference?
We primarily use blue star.
Before we end, is that something you could demonstrate here in court as to how blue star works?
Yes,
Do you have some with you?
yes.
Oh wow! All right. This is kind of the analysis of the car, which I think there's a few parts of this case that's really important. Was he in the car? That's GPS evidence. We've seen they went back and forth with the cell towers and people who work for Sprint or T-Mobile already. Then after that, it's like, okay, now we believe you're in the car, and obviously it's up to every juror if they want to believe that Melly was in the car at the time of the shooting. Then they have to say, how did this person or how did these two people get killed? The prosecutors laying out their case to say, yo, the only way these guys got shot when they died is from this one position in the vehicle, which you have footage of him getting into. And clearly, you know, if we're saying he was still with these guys when the shooting happened, he's the one who did it. There was some other wounds, or there's some post-mortem shots at the car to make it look like a drive-by. And this is why they have all these rods, and this is where the explanation was coming in. Let me see if I can skip to some interesting parts.
It's based upon, so if you have two vehicles going in the same direction, I would expect them to have the keyholes, but I would also, if you're being shot at, it's natural to step on the gas and go, which would put you
Checking, Your Honor.
either,
Excuse me, what's the objection? Now,
This is speculation. Speculation.
which would put you either above or forward or behind your shooter. And once that happens, I mean, it's human nature, then we would start to have directionality keyholes from different directions.
And
There's no way that you're going to sit there and let someone shoot you.
Okay. In terms of, is there a demonstrative that would assist in showing the jury what you mean by directionality?
Yes, I believe I have one actually. Or you have one, okay.
You've previously shown defense counsel.
And I'm objecting on the same basis. Discuss.
It's a demonstrative at this point, Your Honor, so I believe the appropriate instruction should be read.
Hey, can I see what you're showing?
Sure.
Objection to it?
27 is Pembroke Road. Pembroke Road dead ends from 27 going eastbound. It dead ends, and there is a trash company there for garbage. They're on the east and it's a two-lane road. On the north and southbound sides of the road, at the time of my examination, was grass and rock. And then if you continue further down, you come to Marsh, and if you go further down, you come into Water Marsh, and that's about all that's out there, besides a lot of mosquitoes.
And so why is it important as a shooting reconstructionist to know the landscape in which this happened?
Well, if I would have had the landscape in 2018, it would have allowed to create a more precise distance for a shooter.
In terms of the drive-by aspect of it, does knowing that location at Pembroke Road help in assessing distances another potential car could have been?
It would not, because this definitely was not involved in a drive-by. There were fire cartridge cases found on the side of the road. I don't think a car, even when I was out there, I don't think a car can drive along that area and shoot the passenger side of that vehicle.
Okay. The additional processing that was done, did you collect a plastic bag from the Miramar Police Department?
Yes, the Miramar Police Department collected a plastic bag out of the vehicle initially during their investigation.
And what additional equipment does the Broward Sheriff's Office have to do further analysis on that?
We have a machine that's called a vacuum metal deposition machine. Essentially, it's a giant cylinder that on the bottom
All right, let me try to see if I get some more interesting shit. Oh, this is photos of inside the car. Here we go.
Forward on Chris Thomas inside the car. You said that you can give a distance away based on the measurements inside the car. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now. How can you determine that that door is closed?
the door, which door?
The rear driver's side passenger door.
That door was closed because I actually applied a chemical called Blue Star to it. Blue Star is attracted to the hemoglobin blood, and it reacted positive, which would be indicative of the door being closed. It actually captured some of the blowback from Anthony Williams and struck that door.
Can you describe to ladies and gentlemen of the jury what types of alternative light sources you used when processing this Jeep?
So I used UV lighting, and the UV lighting is used to locate potential gunshot residue. We're looking at it really illuminates like the barium and the nitrates and gunshot residue. It's also followed by wearing orange goggles, and it allows me to find potential gunshot residue, and then on top of it collect the gunshot residue with a special dauber, which is part of a gunshot residue kit, and it's sticky, so I would come by and dab, if you will, the GSR, the gunshot residue that is identified by the UV light and the orange goggles.
So the image that we're looking at here, which is identified as CSW_4814, what are we looking at here?
So this is the back, this is the driver's side back passenger seat compartment area with that door open, with the passenger door in the open position.
And why is it kind of orange?
It's orange because as I'm also wearing orange goggles, so there's orange, an orange tint.
Chad, give me a second. I'm going to use the bathroom.
And what are you showing with these particular images?
So I'm showing potential GSR, which is, do we have a different color? That's not good. Here is potential GS, there's one right here, potential GSR. So these are this here, here, all collected with the dauber.
Okay. And those were submitted to RJ Lee for analysis?
Yes.
Going on to this back seat here, what are we looking at in this photo?
This is the driver's side of the vehicle, the back seat, and there's a potential GSR on the back seat. There's some right here, and right here. Nope, I'm sorry, that's not GSR. These areas here were GSR that were collected.
And so it's clear for the record that the two that you're circling on the right.
Yes, I'll redo it. Those two right there.
Okay. In terms of this photograph, what are we looking at here?
Do we have a prior?
Is this the back of one of the seats?
Objection, lady.
Sustained.
What are we looking at in this photo?
This, I don't know which seat this is. I think it's the middle seat, but I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I don't want you to guess, so we'll stop on that. Okay. Going forward to this photograph, can you orient the ladies and gentlemen of the jury as to what this particular part of the car is?
This is the back seat, and this is the center console that flips down, that has cup holders in it so that you can place drinks.
Okay. And did you see any suspect GSR particles in this area?
Yes, so there's some. There's some right here and right here that were identified on DAB.
Okay. With the orange tint on it, is that some of the things you're talking about, the difficulties of forensic photography?
Yes. So this is actually the top of that center console where it's the storage area for it. So if you wanted to flip it up, it has a place to be. And this is actually some GSR right here that would be from the ejection port of the firearm. And this is some GSR over here as well. And that was collected on the dauber.
Okay. Now looking at this next photograph, what are we looking at here?
This is the front passenger seat of the rear of it, and it identifies GSR as well. There is some right here, here, and here, which is indicative. There's actually one right here. That's indicative of that intermediate object intercepting the majority of that gunshot residue.
Okay, and in terms of that item, I want to make sure I show you to identify it for, it's been previously admitted into evidence as state 60. Okay, so Sergeant, in terms of the item here that's been previously admitted as state 60, is that the dauber that you're talking about?
Yes.
And can you explain exactly how it works and how you collected it?
May I show it to the jury?
If it helps, we can publish it on the large screen here. You just have to step down.
So this is a collection vial, and on this brown part here pulls out, and on the bottom of it is a black sticky item. And I'll explain its purpose besides collecting in a second, but I want to show what that bottom looks like. So when this is sent to a laboratory for gunshot residue analysis, this is actually what's called a SEM, S-E-M, and they put it into a mass spectrometer to determine the gunshot particles the gunshot residue particles that would be there.
And is this the SEM that you use to collect the GSR suspect particles?
Yes.
Okay, so Sergeant, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as states GG and shown to Defense Counsel for identification. So Sergeant, I'm showing you it states GG for identification purposes only. Do you recognize 2 out of those 3 items?
Yes.
How do you recognize those 2 items?
Those are my signatures and my ID on those.
And are those items in the same or substantially same condition as when you collected them?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time the state would now admit states GG into evidence.
No
Any
good.
objection?
And so,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Is there any objection?
No, sir.
It'll be admitted.
States GG will be marked states 80.
yes, 80. Okay, Sergeant Williams, with regards to the items in this particular packaging, what are the 2 swabs that you collected?
So on the back of the driver's seat of the vehicle, I observed when I applied Blue Star, the chemical that I spoke of that illuminates blood and the hemogroup of blood, I observed what appeared to be a swipe in blood. And a swipe is a blood-bearing surface being transferred to a non-blood-bearing surface. So in this case, a finger or a hand transferring to the back of the seat, which had no blood on it. And I observed this swipe.
Hey, we got the food.
So I collected with a swab the swipe, and then I used an additional swab to collect the non-blood areas on each side of the swipe.
Okay. So in terms of the
Now my mama made me this food the other day. I had to pick it up. Got oxtail, good baked chicken, got some lasagna, curry chicken, all in one, man. Come on now.
location, is there a photo that would help demonstrate where that came from?
If I start eating with my hands, that's oxtail. Y'all gotta know. I'm not like some swine. You feel me? But like it's oxtail. You gotta get into it. You feel me? You can't eat oxtail with no fork. You feel me?
I believe there should be one in here.
Yo, facts. You don't know nothing about this.
Nah, that good oxtail is good eats. It's good eats.
Excuse me, can we approach first?
Yes.
Maybe it'd be a good time for lunch.
That curry chicken, chat.
Sure, sorry.
Hold it. On that. On it. Ain't nothing, man. Eating a little food, looking at a murder scene.
Have an effect.
It's gonna be all right. What y'all eating today?
So it's not necessarily going to help with determining.
Also, any girl I'm with gotta know how to make what my mama make. If you can't make oxtail, we can't even be together. Real facts. Can't make curry chicken, can't be together. Can't make some rice and peas, can't be together. Gotta know how to cook, gotta know how to throw it down. I ain't gonna hold you.
We're just doing any analysis on any ejection port, any ejection analysis from a fire.
In terms of an enclosed space such as this, does that also make a difference?
It would, well, I would expect the cartridge to remain into the vehicle, and that's all I would expect for this.
In terms of
right here.
the angle of the entry without the actual body, can you do that?
No.
Is it common practice to take a body and put it back in the car after autopsy?
It is not. However, it can be done if the body was in place upon scene. We can make a preliminary analysis there. I don't believe the Miramar Police Department had that opportunity. These individuals were brought right into the hospital, so that opportunity was lost.
Okay. In terms of the firearm itself, were you ever presented with a firearm that was said to be the one used in this case?
No.
So, we talked about the back spatter. On the medical examiner's report, did you review the medical examiner's report for the backseat passenger, Christopher Thomas?
I did.
Who was it that noticed a mislabeled entrance and exit wound?
I noticed that.
And what did you do when you realized that there was an issue or concern with the report?
I notified you that there was an issue, that a defect in Mr. Thomas was labeled twice.
Okay. And so what, after that was done, did you look through the photos from the hospital?
I did, because I observed that Mr. Thomas had a defect on his right quadricep area, the upper part of his leg. That came from the door, and it entered into the seat. And when I was looking at the autopsy photos of Mr. Thomas, I would expect to find an exit wound from the medical examiner's office, and they did not have a picture to produce that, and it wasn't annotated in their report. So again, I notified you of this discrepancy as well.
And in terms of, were you able to figure out and determine which projectile caused that specific injury based on your reconstruction?
I was.
So we talked a little bit about the shots to Anthony Williams. I'm going to move on and talk to any of the injuries to Christopher Thomas. What did you look at in review in trying to establish a shooting reconstruction of the injuries to Mr. Thomas?
So the rods from the rear of the vehicle, Mr. Thomas assumed most of his injuries from the rear of the vehicle. I believe 5 projectiles entered him from the rear of the vehicle. 1 projectile entered him on his quadricep, upright quadricep. Okay. And I believe 2 projectiles entered him on his foot. And that's going from memory. Right, these autopsy photos, or?
So I'm going to come here to 6754, your photograph on that.
Okay, so these are the terminal points from the rear of the vehicle. Mr. Thomas is seated in this position And of the 6 rounds that went into the seat, Mr. Thomas assumed 5 of them. And it is a very similar pattern in Mr. Thomas's back. It may not look like it lines up correctly, however...
Let me interrupt you just there for a second before we go. On the top photograph that is labeled and marked as H, did that wound intersect in any way with the body of Christopher Thomas?
No.
Where was that projectile or defect later found?
That projectile perforated the headrest and continued to go forward in the vehicle and ended up striking Mr. Williams and I believe his back.
Okay. So I want to go forward on the back of the car. You take this picture, CSW_6760. What are you showing with this particular photograph?
So these are the trajectory rods that have entered into the vehicle. They are not exactly at the correct angle. The reason being, obviously, there's no glass. So they perforated the glass first, and then they made a secondary perforation into the seats. So that's why they're not exactly level.
So, Sergeant, are you saying that the end of these rods is where those shots were fired from?
No,
Why not?
because I'm missing the glass. So the glass would, obviously, if I can take a rod and put it through the glass and then into the terminal point, I would be able to obtain this picture to be demonstrably correct.
Okay, in terms of the angles and things that you measured on these, how did you get those angle measurements?
So what I ended up doing is recreating the back glass based on putting tape across the entire back of the window
Roasted
and
breadfruit is for
making
breakfast,
it line
nigga.
up with the glass that's existing in place on the top, sides, and bottom, and lined it up with that to make the arch of the glass window, and then ended up putting these rods into the proper position, and then created by right angles to create the proper angles for these strike marks.
In terms of the location in which the gun was fired that created these defects in the car, can you say it was a certain distance away with specificity?
I can give a range for these shots and for the shots on the side of the vehicle.
Okay. And in terms of the range, are you saying it could be a mile away at a 50-foot ladder?
No, I can give a specific range.
And how can you do that in this case?
So the specific range is based upon the 2 shooters that were presented to me, and I would obtain measurements.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Can we go separate? Sure.
Okay, so the accident reconstructionist is testifying about the question the credibility of these experts.
Corey, Lester, and can point together.
At an angle.
Let me wash my hands real
So
quick.
his head was at an angle as he was seated in that front seat.
And based on your analysis of this vehicle, did you find any projectiles anywhere in the headliner?
No,
Did you find any projectiles in the top portion of the B pillar on the passenger side?
no,
What about the A pillar?
no,
Was there any projectiles in the front windshield?
No.
Based on your training and experience, can you state where the exit wound of that head had to have gone through? Where that projectile would have had to have exited that vehicle?
It would have exited through the front passenger window.
How can you say that?
Number one, there's no glass there. However, most importantly is the projectile entered in the back of his skull and exited through the front of his skull with his head at a resting angle. So, can I get up?
Please, that help and assist in going.
I cannot.
So, based on that projectile and the blowback, you can make what opinions?
So, based on the angle of this this projectile, the blowback is indicative of a firearm being in close vicinity of the head. The head is something that bleeds profusely when it's pierced.
I feel like we watched this before. Let me see this part. Here we go.
As you stated earlier, of being how the seats are and the closeness, this is a little further away, so you're not going to obtain as much blowback to be able to hit up here, and the blowback would come this way, back that way.
Okay.
It wouldn't go any other way.
So, I want to go.
Did y'all see that?
Why do you
Rather large.
Okay. Okay, so this is a cross-examination. And the reason I'm going to play a little bit of cross-examination is that the defense got a hard job to try to, debunk. Like, what the fuck are they going to say? Let's see.
Diminish over time. The barium will be around, and the lead will be around. And that's the other two particles. So those will stick around because they're stronger metals, but the nitrates that burn, they'll disappear relatively soon, which is generally on the gunshot residue collection kit that there is. It's recommended to collect GSR within 3 hours of the shooting due to wanting to collect those nitrates so that you can have 3 particles. But just because there's not 3 doesn't mean that it's not there. What was collected were 2 particle GSR, which is 2 of the 3 particles of gunshot residue.
Okay. See if you can follow. For there to be a definitive determination that the particles that are being tested represent GSR, there needs to be all 3, correct?
Correct.
And there were not all 3 in this instance, correct?
Correct.
And the reason you think they weren't all 3 is because the third one would have dissipated over time?
Correct.
And you were called in 3 years later?
Yes.
So the incompetence that would have occurred here,
She's saying.
it's not your fault that what you're saying is this isn't your fault.
Well, I don't know if that's a fair question. I'm not saying that I'm wrong. I collected what I saw.
Okay.
If I was there on day 1, there would be 3 particle GSR.
You're speculating that there would be 3 particle GSR, correct?
Well, it would be within the time frame.
Right. But you don't know that it would have come back as GSR because there was no definitive determination made on the particles that you collected, correct?
It's not that there is no definitive. So RJ Lee will generally want, I gave you that report. Can I have it back?
This one?
Yeah. So they have on there, I believe it says 2 particle GSR, there's over 9.
Is it correct that as regards the samples that you retrieved, the result of the testing was total particles characteristic of GSR 0?
Correct. So you, in order to have that, can I have that back? In order to have that, you would need to have all 3. That's my argument. So if you look at the analytical results on page 2, where it says that there's total particles characteristics is 0, and then total 2 component particles is over 9. And it explains up here what 2 components are. And the 2 components, it says right here that 2 component...
You can't read from the report.
All right. 2 component and 1 component GSR are 2 component and 1 component particles are consistent with GSR.
Okay. But there is no definitive determination that an expert would make that it is GSR without all 3 components. Is that correct?
No, so you're missing the point. There are 3 components to GSR. The report that you just referenced states that they found 2 of the 3 components of GSR. Now, it is not normal for people to have in their car lead and barium. So lead and barium are going to be in the car from a GSR incident. So those are the 2 that were collected. The nitrates were not collected because it's 3 years after the fact for me.
Okay.
So,
Understood.
therefore, when it says 1 component, which is going to be the lead, 2 component would be the other, which is barium, they are characteristics of GSR. And on that report, it states that 2 component particles, there are over 9. So that is everything but the nitrates, and if it was collected on day 1, you would have the nitrates. So your argument is not right.
Okay. So let's go now to we're at 6729. That's the photograph with the gentleman looking at the stars. Let's go to 6730 and get a clearer picture of 6730. 6731. This is another scenario that you posited.
Correct.
And in that scenario, you have someone holding the gun sideways and sticking their hand in the window like I have my phone in my hand right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't consider somebody back here sticking the gun in a way that would be natural to shoot as opposed to what you depicted.
So if I were to consider your scenario, the projectile would actually end up in the headliner and possibly through the roof, because that is a very sharp angle. You're on your knee and you're shooting in an upward position through the window.
Oh nah, this detective about to cook. This nigga he's a really good lawyer. I really like him, but this nigga about to cook him with some physics right here.
And it would not hit anybody but the car.
Okay, I'll give you that. This chair, you would agree that I was trying to demonstrate on, is lower than the car window. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
So I wouldn't have been on my knee. I was trying to give you a demonstrative. You can.
Oh, you
appreciate
can't tell me that.
Okay. So if somebody were sticking their gun in a natural firing motion as opposed to sidearm, at the back of that window, at an angle that would have allowed the projectile to go through that window, that's not something you considered and thought maybe you might put in the picture as opposed to this guy with the sidearm action?
Well, again, we could go back and forth onto every possible scenario that you could have in your mind. I'm not going to entertain all of your scenarios. If you come up with one that would line up with the blood and the trajectories, then we can talk about that. But as far as your scenarios that are moot, I can't speak to them because they don't make sense.
Fair enough. Have you ever in your 19 plus years seen someone fire a firearm with their hand in the position that you see depicted in your demonstrative 6731? Ever?
Well, as you said earlier, maybe in the movies.
A bad movie.
Well, I mean, whatever movie you want to pick.
In real life, have you ever seen anybody at the range or anywhere fire a firearm in the way that you depicted that person in 6731? Ever?
I don't recall, but it is a possibility that a firearm can be fired in that position without jamming and strike a target.
Okay. Now let's move to 6732. Same picture, same angle.
Yes.
Right? 6733, same sideways gun angle from the other side of the car.
No, it's the same side.
I mean, the photo being taken from the other side of the vehicle.
Correct.
Okay. 6734. The gentleman is holding the firearm again.
Same position.
Same position. 6735, same position.
Yes.
6736, same position.
Yes.
Okay. Now, of all the scenarios you could come up with to put in your report and to have demonstrated, every last one of them included somebody holding a firearm at an angle that you have never seen anybody hold it in your life.
No, that's an incorrect statement.
Okay.
They trying to say Melly held the gun sideways? Holy.
You were brought in to do a reconstruction, a shooting reconstruction, correct?
Yes.
And prior to doing that, you observed the shooting reconstruction that Miramar did, correct?
Yes.
And I think you said you took one look at it and you knew you had to start from scratch, right?
Yes.
The term that you use is what Miramar did was the worst thing you had seen in your life, right?
Yes.
Okay, because they used string and some kind of gum, putty.
Putty.
And first of all, in their depictions or in their reconstructions, they had the string sagging.
Yes.
They also had all the strings from all of the perforations tied to the same lamppost, right?
Yeah, to the ruler, like a ruler thing.
The ruler,
I think it was a ruler.
which didn't make sense at all.
No, that would surmise that the shooter stood there and made miraculous rounds.
Okay. And that So just to be clear, what Miramar did before you took over was totally incompetent, in your professional opinion.
Improper characterization.
It lacked training.
Okay. When you said it's the worst thing you had seen in your life, your words, what you meant to say was it lacked training.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, I don't like to be rude, but it lacks training.
Okay. So if you weren't being rude, you would say that it was an incompetent exercise and investigation.
Sustained. Let's move on. You got your point.
Okay. Thanks. And then, when you took over, the first thing you asked the state to do was tell you who, strike that. Did the state tell you who they thought the shooters were?
Objection, hearsay.
Excuse me, what's your side?
The back there.
5 feet 10 and a half.
5 feet 8 and a half.
So 60 inches is 5 feet. So 10 inches after that. 5, 10 and a half.
5, 10 and a half? Okay.
Am I wrong?
I don't know if that's fine. 70 inches. Let's just leave it at that.
70.5, yeah.
And you determined that his shooting height was 60 inches.
Correct.
How did you determine that?
So that was from him standing in a standing position, his arm extended out at 90 degrees, and a measurement was obtained from the ground to his finger.
Okay. Could you stand up, if you don't mind, Your Honor, and demonstrate what you determined was a shooting height?
Yes.
Okay. So, stay there for a second. When you say shooting height, stay sideways. You mean hand out at 90 degrees?
No.
Okay. So, when you are determining, stay up there for a second. All right. So, when you say 90 degrees, you are assuming
Yo, this lawyer putting hands on the cop. Holy.
that person
Keep your hand up there, bitch nigga.
was not shooting at that trajectory or that, correct?
No, not correct.
Okay, but your analysis only took that angle into account
No.
for the standing shooting height.
So you have two different heights. Sorry.
Like get the fuck off my
Two
hand,
different
bitch.
heights that are made into account. So the one that we just talked about, and then we have squatting with the hand out
Okay.
at 90.
All right.
So now we have what you just asked for, that window. Follow?
Okay. So you determined a standing shooting height of 60 inches, and you determined that by measuring the tip of Cortland Henry's arm from the ground with his arm extended at 90 degrees from his body.
Yes.
Okay, you can sit back. And then you also determined you called it a squatting shooting height of 28 inches.
You all right?
I keep tripping over this thing.
Lost the wires? I'm sorry, let's see what we can...
Sorry about that, Jeff. See if we can anchor it. Just don't trip. Okay. And you also determined what you refer to as a squatting shooting height of 28 inches, right?
Yes.
And when you say squatting, I think the demonstration you made was doing so,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you determined that to be 28 inches.
Yes.
Okay. Now, for Jamel Demons, you determined him to be 4.5 inches shorter,
66 inches.
His standing shooting height was,
57 inches.
and his squatting shooting height was.
31 inches.
So even though he was 4 inches shorter, his squatting shooting height was 3 inches higher than the taller person, Cortland Henry.
Yes, so torsos, you can have a longer torso than Henry. So you can have longer legs but a shorter torso, or a longer torso but shorter legs. So that's how that works to be that way.
So essentially what you're saying is that Cortland Henry has so much more of a deeper squat or a shorter torso that when he squats and extends his arm at 90 degrees, it is 3 inches lower than someone who is 4 inches shorter than him.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's what you say, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, what did you use these measurements in order? What did you use them for? How did you use them in your analysis?
Objection outside the scope.
Overruled.
So these measurements were used to determine a minimum and a maximum shooting distance from the vehicle.
Okay. I want you to tell me, and you were talking about the perforations that were on the outside of the vehicle.
And to the yeah, anything from the outside of the vehicle, nothing on the inside.
Okay. So I want to use this red pointer. And let's say, for example, you had an angle like so, right?
Okay.
Into the side of the vehicle. How would you use somebody's height to determine where they were?
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of direct. We may approach.
Here we go. Back again. The fuck? What the fuck?
It's looking a little scary for Melly act, I ain't gonna lie.
Maximum.
Nah, I heard this thing was the prosecutor was cooking today, or at least their witnesses were cooking. Let me see.
Yeah.
Distance for a shooter when you have a known height. I would take, let's say for instance, the minimum height. I would take the minimum height minus the strike mark height, times that by the tangent of the angle, times pi divided by 180. Now, that being said, say I don't have a distance, or I'm sorry, a height for the shooter. And when you don't have a height for the shooter, you would somewhat reverse these numbers. I'm just going to say somewhat, just to make it easier to understand. You would somewhat reverse these numbers to where you would obtain a minimum and maximum height for a shooter. So,
but you'd have to know where the shooter was standing.
No.
Okay.
So once you have your strike mark, your entry, right, and I put the rod in there, and I get a height of the rod, I get a height of the strike mark, I get a length of the rod, and I get an angle, right? So from there, I would be able to work backwards to determine a minimum and maximum height for a shooter.
Okay.
And that I recently did with an outside agency from the sheriff's office, where they brought a car to me and wanted to know what the possible heights of the shooter are. I can only give a minimum and a maximum, and I gave them a minimum and maximum height of, and just stick with my answer here, of between 5.47 feet tall and 5.95 feet tall.
Okay.
And I said, hold on, can I just finish?
Okay.
And I said to them that it looks to me that the shooter was directly in front of this car, right at the very bumper, when he fired into, or she fired into this windshield. The detective then showed me the video, and it's exactly what happened. The shooter was directly in front of the car. So that tells me that my math was correct, and giving them and determining his distance, and then determining a height. So you have to inverse the trig in order to get the answer to your question. And that, we could be here all day doing all that math.
Okay. Let me get back to my question in this case.
Right. I thought I answered it.
Okay. Because in that other case, they had a video showing where the person was and how tall they were, but they called you in to tell them how tall they were in the video, right?
But I didn't know that they had that video.
Okay. All right. In this case, you talk about the length of the rod
Correct.
as being part of the constants, part of the things you know.
Yes.
Okay. The length of the rod is meaningless unless the length of the rod is supposed to represent the distance from which the person is standing.
No.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that in your trigonometry, if this rod were half the distance and not as long as it were, as it is, you would get a totally different number with that same trajectory. Is that what you're saying?
With that same trajectory, can I put it in my formula here again?
I want you to answer my question.
I can't do it without doing the math. I don't know your answer right off the top of my head. That's an unfair question.
Well, let me ask you a different way. You said one of the things that you know is the angle of insertion or the trajectory into the car and the length of the rod.
Correct.
And I'm asking you that if you do your analysis with a rod that is half that length, will it change your analysis at all?
The length of the rod, keep in mind, the length of the rod is based on the terminal end of the projectile.
That's one end. The length of the rod
So
is
what's sticking out from the hole, from the entry, that's what gets measured. Not the whole rod. So the whole rod going in to terminal, what's sticking out of our hole, if you will, that's the measurement when I say length of rod.
Okay. And the only significance of the length of the rod that is protruding from the hole, the only significance is if the end of that rod is supposed to tell you where the person is, because otherwise the length of the part protruding does nothing other than to indicate the trajectory to you.
The length of the rod has nothing to do with where the person is.
Okay, fine. So, if you have nothing but an angle, you don't have the person's height, and you don't have the distance away from which that person was, you're telling this jury that you can determine the height of the person with nothing more than a trajectory rod, and it's based on the length of the rod.
It's based on more than that.
But you do not have the variables of where they're standing, and you do not have the height of the shooter.
I can get the height of the shooter.
Okay.
This detective not going, y'all.
One of the things that you would do in your analysis if you were on this case in the exception is take measurements of the actual shell casings on the scene, right?
100%.
And you would do that in order to try and triangulate where that person may have been standing.
Correct. So the firearm is obviously going to eject, most of them eject to the right. So they'll eject to the right. It's a spontaneous distance. However, it's something of significance that would want to be documented.
Because it gives you some idea of where the person may have been standing.
It gives you an idea of, yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. And in this case, the Miramar Police Department did not take any of those measurements.
Correct.
Okay. And that handicapped your investigation, at least in some measure.
It didn't necessarily handicap it, but it could have made it for a more, it could have made it more, or just brought it more together if the measurements were there. So if I bring the car out there like I did, and I have measurements of where these shell casings are, and then I have measurements of where my shooters are, and then I can I can make a diagram of where my shooter is, where the casing is, where the shooter is, where the casing is. That would make for a more precise report.
Okay.
Which we measure everything. We measure all of our casings at the sheriff's office.
Okay. Now, in doing your analysis in this case, and we're talking about the analysis concerning who may have shot into the car, the universe of people that you were considering were the two defendants that the state identified for you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if anybody else on the planet shot into that car, that wouldn't be a consideration that you made in your analysis, correct?
The shooters that were presented to me is what I'm here to testify about. I can't speak for anybody else.
Okay. So your analysis is limited to an analysis of the two people who the state identified for you.
Correct.
Okay. And in doing that analysis, you at first determined that it was more likely that Mr. Demons shot into the car than Cortland Henry. Right?
Correct.
And then we took your deposition. Right?
Right. And then I realized that I used his actual height for the back of the vehicle.
Okay. And then you revised your report and you then concluded that it could have been either one of them.
It could have been both for the entire event on the outside of the car.
Okay. Do you think that the fact that you only came up with Mr. Demons initially was influenced by the fact that that's what the state was telling you?
No. I think that it was influenced by the fact that, as you stated earlier, with your demonstrative there with the rod, when we used his actual, when I used his actual height, it made him taller.
Okay. So essentially, you had made a mistake because you used the wrong numbers, right?
Because for the back of, just the back of the car, I used his height.
Okay. And when you revised it, you determined that it could very well have been Cortland Henry that shot into the side of that car.
It could be both, actually. So it brought Mr. Dimmon's height to where it should have been for the back of the car. For the back of the car and the side of the car, it could have been both of them.
Okay. Now, when you did your assessment of this vehicle, you said you were wearing these Smurf suits, right?
Something like that.
And it was so as not to contaminate the scene.
To contaminate the car, yes.
The crime scene, and the crime scene in this case was the car.
Correct.
The interior of the vehicle.
Yes.
And you discovered 2 projectiles that had been sitting there for 3+ years and had not been discovered.
Correct.
And you also determined that there was blood splatter on the headliner that had not previously been detected.
Blood spatter.
What did I say?
Splatter.
Spatter. Okay. Thanks. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And you know that car had been searched at least 3 times before.
I had no idea how many times it's been searched.
Okay. And do you know if they were wearing Smurf suits when they were rummaging through the car?
I have no idea. I wasn't there.
Now, the blood on Cortland, the blood on that yellow, what was it, a jacket?
I don't know quite what that was.
I want to show you.
Rain curve or something.
I want to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 31. Matter of fact, let me put it up here.
Can I look at them first, sir?
Sure.
It just distorts something. Switch it over.
That's
You don't want to talk about these.
No, just a check.
Let me get a paper clip for those.
While I go up there with that, you're going to need that. Oh, can we take a break? This needs to do.
Back to court.
Niggas whispering and shit.
So, Howard?
Yes, sir.
I don't know where you're at with your cross, you know, and I don't want you to break, like, exactly, but you can find a spot if you're not gonna be close to, you need more if you have now, you know, it's 10 to 5, 15 to 5, so you go for a while and just find a place where it's convenient, a breaking point for you, all right?
I'm thinking maybe we could let him off early, you know, just do what I'm doing now, and then we can just cut it. It would be a little bit before 5. Okay, thank you.
We're supposed to tell the jury to let him go at 5 o'clock.
I ain't gonna lie. This judge kind of seemed kind of cool.
I think we should go home at
448
I think
first.
you should tell them the temperature.
They know. They know. They're all wearing coats and winter coats.
They're talking about the jury. That's why they muted up again. Let's see.
Oh, that's much better. Oh,
Thank you, Chris. See that?
yes. So yeah, this picture is much better. This is some type of rubbery type surface.
Right. Okay. And because it's this rubbery outer garment kind of raincoat, so you could tell that this was some kind of a smear.
Correct. So blood dries from the outside in, and in my opinion, can you keep it still 1 second there?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the full view for you.
This is, to me, as I testified to another item, and I don't recall if it was this one, but so this is, it was to the seat. So this is what's called transfer, which is a blood-bearing object touching a non-blood-bearing object.
And in this case, the non-blood-bearing object would be the jacket.
Correct. Okay. So the blood-bearing object resembles, let me make sure I'm still in drawing mode. Yep. A finger.
Okay.
And also another finger. Specifically, and I'm going to put it in a different color so that it can be noted. Specifically for that second one that I identified, specifically right here. That would be the curve of that finger coming in, joints, joint. It looks like a finger. So it's a blood-bearing object being a hand touching a non-blood-bearing object. And the blood-bearing object had enough blood on it that it caused it to actually spill over, if you will. So all of this spilt over when it was laid down or whatever. And then, as I said earlier, blood dries from the outside in. And since it was dry, the outside was molested, and it was molested down here, and then that transfer ended up coming over to here as well. So it was touched at least 2 times by a subject with blood on their hands.
Okay. I'm going to take your word for all of that.
Okay, thank you.
But what we're looking at there, you're saying you see 2 fingerprints there?
Hold it still.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me bring up my fancy drawer here.
Wait, before I go there, strike that.
Okay. Hold on.
You see the ridges within that blood mark right up top there.
So the ridges that you see are actually the ridges of the item itself.
Okay, so I just want to make sure. So these ridges are the coat and not a fingerprint, right?
Correct.
Okay. But you're saying, notwithstanding the absence of ridges consistent with a fingerprint, you have identified by shape that whatever bloody surface transferred the blood onto this item were at least 2 fingers.
Right, so can you zoom it back out?
Sure.
And
Like so?
let's get the whole thing, bring it up a little, maybe center it. There we go.
All right.
And so what I'm saying is it resembles, it's consistent with a finger. So again, you have a finger. Whoa, how did I get so big? What did I do wrong? I got it, never mind. Okay. So you have a finger here, and you have the knuckle and a knuckle of your hand. And then you have the other finger here, right here, which these resemble fingers, knuckle not cool. And then again, as I stated, that blood dries from the outside in. This blood over here was all not dried yet, and then you have some molestation of this blood by an unknown object to me, and that originates actually at that crest where it's an empty spot, and it comes down this way. So, but as I stated earlier, there is enough blood on this suspected hand that when this, we'll call it a raincoat, was laid down in the back of this Jeep, that it allowed for pulling the coat to extend out, and that's a substantial amount of blood for that raincoat.
Okay. All right. So the question that I wanted to ask you is whether or not you had an opportunity. I guess I need to stick this in there.
Chat, give it a few more minutes. After this, I got about like 4 topics we're gonna hit, and probably gonna wrap it up for today. But let me just get through this last little part. Then the judge is gonna dismiss them, and then we got a few topics to hit. If you got any topics you want me to talk about, please just spam it in the chat for me.
Let me get thumbnails on this thing. Let me get thumbnails.
They're charging you for this assistance.
Okay.
Big one.
Thank you so much. Now this was Cortland Henry's shirt from which blood was retrieved, right?
Okay.
And as distinguished from the jacket, which had a material that allowed you to determine that it was a transfer smear on a fabric.
By the way, Uncle Drip on Rumble, thank you for the Rumble rants. What topic you got, brother? You gotta tell me.
That's a knit like this. You can't tell whether the blood on that is from some sort of transfer, right?
So if the shirt, first of all, it's inside out, so I can't really make a determination on it as it is. However, if you have this shirt where suspected blood is, and you spray our fancy Blue Star on it, the Blue Star will show spatter or smear or transfer.
Makes sense.
Okay.
So that if the hand that might have touched that jacket did like that, it would appear as spatter.
So the hand, if that touched the jacket, just like flicked it, is what you're saying?
Well, if in some way the hand was moving quickly and blood came off the hand onto the shirt, it would appear as spatter.
It would appear as cast off.
Okay, which is different from spatter.
It's all part of blood-stained pattern, but it would appear as cast off.
My question to you is, the blood that was retrieved, that was found on Cortland Henry's shirt, you don't know how it got there?
I posited that the blood from the front of his shirt is from Anthony Williams' blowback, and the blood on the back of his shirt is from Christopher Thomas's two rounds that he took.
I understand.
But do we have a picture of this shirt the other way around as it would be worn?
I don't know. I know you posited that it was blowback, and just to be clear, your scenario was him sitting still with a .40 caliber being shot from behind his neck, and he does not move, and it came back onto him and splattered, right?
Well, I don't blame him for moving. I mean, we have a firearm going off. I don't think I would move either.
Okay. Okay. All right. Then it's not this. Where is it's a white t-shirt? This. Okay.
Help with the pictures?
I think these are. This is everything.
The front.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Is there any way to
Drew filmed this
rotate
shirt.
it, Mr. Howard? To rotate it to
No,
position
Yeah.
perfect, and then zoom in.
You're saying that it's not possible that that could have.
Oh, can you wait back?
I didn't do that.
It's sensitive.
You're saying that it's not possible that the blood on that shirt got there any other way than a blowback.
That is not cast off at all.
That is blood spatter from somebody being shot. That's the only
Correct.
possible way that
And
could
it's
have
actually relatively consistent with the blowback that's on the headliner as well.
Okay, so I'm just understanding that your opinion is that there's no way that that blood got onto that shirt other than blowback from a gunshot.
Correct.
Okay, and your reasoning is?
Well, he was wearing the shirt. He was seated in that position. A gun strikes Mr. Williams. The blowback goes into the air and lands on him, lands on the headliner, lands on the back seat.
Okay, so all of the reason why you're saying that it's impossible that it got there any other way is because you're assuming that he was sitting in the seat, in the driver's seat at the time the shot was fired.
Well, I'm not assuming because it's clear in the pictures that there is no blood on that seat, and the explanation for that is because somebody is in that seat.
And it's Cortland Henry, you know that for sure.
If whoever is driving that car,
Okay, so the car was moving at the time these shots were being taken?
whoever was driving it, whoever was seated in that seat.
Whoever was seated in that seat at the time.
Correct.
Okay.
But that's cast off. Can I look at the back one?
Okay. That's actually the front.
That's the sweatshirt. This is the t-shirt he's asking you to see.
He wants to see the back.
That's the back.
Okay.
The back has the large logo.
Okay.
Okay.
It's the back.
Yeah, that's not going to be.
I didn't do that. Just
I think you
everybody
did. That's not transferred either.
Okay, that's definitely coming from blowback.
Yes.
Okay. And your, the reason that you are saying that is?
It's shape. It's consistent with, and it's coming down. It's coming from a up and down onto the shirt, and it can try not to touch it.
I'm not touching.
So, all right, we'll use white. So this is actually what the hell? White. So this is actually coming down, and this is coming down also. So this is coming from above. I'm sorry, I'm losing the microphone. This is blood coming from above the shirt. So that's not going to be transferred.
Okay.
So this is blood that's in the air and coming down onto the shirt. And that's what I'm reading in these photographs for the back of the shirt.
Okay, you done with that?
Yes, sir.
And the only way that blood can come from up down onto a shirt is if it's coming out of a wound when a bullet hits the person.
Correct. So it's going to be coming, and it's not necessarily that it's going to be. It's, you know, if you shoot somebody in the arm, it's not necessarily going to cause as much blowback as the head. So the head is the one that's creating the majority of this blowback.
Okay. Now would be a good time, Judge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pick it up tomorrow, so remember the admonition, do not discuss the case, don't form any opinion about the case, don't allow anyone to discuss the case in your presence, and certainly no research. Just leave your notepads on your chairs, we'll see everybody back tomorrow. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, have a good night.
All right, there we go. There we go, people. There we go. All right. Good. I think they're pretty much done.
Well, if he doesn't show, we'll be out the door at 11.
It's all speculation, but if Ms. Smith indicated that he indicated he wasn't going to cooperate in any way, shape, or form, the chances of him showing up for this deposition are slim than none.
Agreed. My concern, though, is that this is the second deposition we've had the discussion, because then the next thing I have to bring up with Your Honor is we're going to have to coordinate an additional deposition because defense had deleted a witness from the witness list in March of 2022, and then now they just told me today that they are going to add that witness back on. So if I cancel the previously set deposition of this witness, and so now they're putting this on again last minute in terms of that. So we're going to have court intervention as well as to that scheduling and making sure everybody's available for that.
May I respond to that, Judge? She provided case law last week, I think last Friday, which now requires us to put that witness back on.
I'm trying to see who the witness.
Attempted, and we knew we figured we would take the depot on Friday so that we would have time to transcribe it and not cause any delay, because we're under the impression, and Your Honor did not grant the motion to exclude these witnesses, that we've attempted to take depots, attempted to serve them in numerous places over the last 2 years. They are listed as A witnesses. I suggest to the court that they are material witnesses if they show, and we're doing everything we can under the circumstances not to delay this one. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
I understand what you said, I heard it. So this is my thought. I don't know who you have hearings with tomorrow. You mentioned Judge Fine, you mentioned Judge Siegel. I don't know what Judge Fine's schedule is or not. I don't know what Judge Siegel's schedule is or not, but I'm sure that it's something that we can work out. I know as to the case you have with me, I'm sure it's something we can work out. So,
of course, Your Honor. But again, I'm just being told now that I'm supposed to now provide a room.
I agree with you about you should have been noticed. I don't have any issue with it.
I take full responsibility and I apologize.
But the question is, what are we going to do now?
Well, if it's on Zoom, that's a lot easier because then I can jump on and go from there. But for defense counsel to then all of a sudden make this here in person without any notice to the state seems highly irregular on that. So this is still going to be on Zoom. The witness can show up and then be told, we moved it to this afternoon when everybody is available, and do it at 3 p.m. after Ms. Smith and I are available to take this witness's deposition.
So is it on Zoom?
We served him on Zoom, for Zoom, and we changed it because of how material he is.
So it's not on Zoom, it's supposed to be scheduled in person?
Yes, sir.
We'd be fine with striking the witness if the state
I mean,
wants.
exactly. If they say they've talked to him and he's not coming, just remove him from the witness list, for God's sakes. I mean, we've been trying to take his depo for 3 years, Judge.
So we'd be happy to go forward and for Trevor rescuing because he feels threatened and can't be here in court.
All right, so this is the way we're going to handle it. All right, the guy's noticed to be deposed. Now it's not a Zoom deposition; it's in person. It's inconvenient. It should have been noticed to you. I agree with all that. But we're in trial on a serious case. State seeking the death penalty. I mean, sometimes we have to change. They were able to get service on the witness. Let's see if he shows up. So if you need assistance with any of the judges, I'll take care of it. You let me know who it is. I'll either reschedule those hearings. I'll ask my office to do that. And we'll contact the judges. Just tell them that you're incapacitated.
Who's the witness? I'm wondering who that is.
Because you're taking a deposition.
Not a problem, and just so I want to make sure that travel has been arranged for this witness, if we're doing it in person.
It's a 2-hour drive. I don't understand why you arrange to travel.
Pardon me?
It's a 2-hour drive, I believe, from his house to here.
I don't know any of that. To be candid with you, I don't typically arrange for travel or have it, but whatever the rules provide for, that's what the rules do.
If there's any travel expense, if he shows, we'll reimburse him.
All right, so let's just see what happens. My guess is if Ms. Smith's conversation is correct, he's not going to be here anyway. So let's just see what happens. All right?
May I suggest that the state attempt to call him tonight or tomorrow?
That is something that we can work out. I know as to the case you have with me.
I'm trying to figure out who it is.
If he doesn't show, we'll be out the door at 11.
How long is your hearing supposed to stay?
It is scheduled for an hour from, let me double check on this, if I can schedule.
It's probably trying.
From 11.
Yo, that's what I'm trying to get a name.
12. On that, they set the deposition without any notice of attempt to coordinate with myself for 10:30.
Understood, and I understand they're supposed to try for the trial.
We've made several attempts, and in fact, Your Honor, I spoke with him myself. He indicated to me that he was not coming, and I asked him if I could arrange transportation, arrange a hotel. He said if I sent a plane for him, he would not show up.
And to go about on the depot for afternoons, I think we will finish with Sergeant Williams, and then there's one other records custodian for the morning that's a quick witness, and then we could use that afternoon to take the deposition.
Are you going to produce involved in it? Is that all of that?
Are you going to produce him?
I have been trying to serve the witness. He is available here. So in terms of
The only reason I did that, Your Honor, and it's my fault, is we just recently got a new address on this witness. It is Trevian Glass. That was one of the witnesses that I had.
What's the name?
Are you going to produce involved in it? Is that all of that?
Are you going to produce him?
I have been trying to serve the witness. He is available here. So in terms of
The only reason I did that, Your Honor, and it's my fault, is we just recently got a new address on this witness. It is Trevian Glass. That was one of the witnesses that I had filed a motion for better address. We got a better address. We tried to serve him at various addresses. I filed numerous motions to exclude them. Judge Siegel would not grant that and basically said if the state produces them, we'll recess and take his deposition as soon as I got that new address.
I don't know who that is. All right, anyway. Okay. We will see what happens tomorrow. I don't know who that witness is. Obviously, I would imagine prosecutors trying to have mad people in court. They probably want to talk to Fredo Bang. They probably want to talk to what? Yeah, they probably want to talk to Fredo Bang. They probably want to talk to Track, or they want to have them on the stand. These guys would probably not want to be around. You get what I mean? Somebody said 6ix9ine is live.